Well, hey guys, I just got out of Captain... What? What? What are you guys yelling about? Oh, goodness. Wrong superhero shirt. Give me like 2 seconds. I'll be right back. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today we're getting into all of my thoughts, spoiler free of course, on Captain America Brave New World. A huge thank you to Marvel Studios and Disney for giving me the chance to watch this at my local IMAX theater. It wasn't AutoNation IMAX, but it was in an IMAX theater at my AMC. So this was, listen, for all the hate that this movie was getting before it even dropped, I guess the movie did silence the haters for the most part. Now, it releases in theaters February 14th, so when you see it, let me know what you think. And trust me, you're going to want to get loud in the comments even on this video. So go ahead, tell me what you guys think about my thoughts as you watch this, and get subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on reviews for huge movies as the year goes on, including Superman. Yeah, it's about to be a super summer. Now, if you don't know much about the movie, let's get into some of the details. It's directed by Julius Onah, who actually directed the Cloverfield Paradox. We can forget about that movie. Well, this one stars Anthony Mackie, who plays Captain America, or Sam Wilson as he's known, and then Harrison Ford, who plays President Thunderbolt Ross. We also have Ramirez, who plays Joaquin Torres, now known as Falcon, and then Shira Haas, who plays Ruth Bat-Seraph. Now, that character... No, we won't touch that character. It's just, we're going to take the character as it is in this film. But the movie itself, the premise, is pretty simple, and I wouldn't say that it necessarily has to be a film where before it you have to watch every single Marvel film. It just really helps that Eternals now is paying off, if that makes sense. So let's get into a little bit of the synopsis of the movie. After meeting with newly elected U.S. President Thaddeus Ross, Sam finds himself in the middle of an international incident. He now must discover the reason behind a nefarious global plot before the true mastermind has the world seeing red. So as you can tell, there are already a couple of villains in this movie. There's maybe a A plot, a B plot, and possibly a C plot. But hey, for the most part, I'm a little surprised about how much I like this movie. So let's get into my positives now on the film itself, because there's some to love here and some to like. So we'll begin with things that, of course, stuck out to me. And on a technical level, guys, goodness, I love the cinematography and the framing of shots in this movie. Now, is it on levels of Dune Part 2? No, but it didn't need to be. Kramer Morgenthau, who also worked on Creed 3, does a really good job of tracking action and blocking shots. And of course, Creed 3 looked amazing as well. But here, he uses a lot of extreme close-up shots to sort of give us a lot of raw emotion on screen. We get to understand moments in different ways too, because of how intense conversations can be, especially there was one between Isaiah Bradley and Sam Wilson. I can't say in which setting, but it was nice to see the side profile and then the reverse side profile, and then it kind of just like kept going back and forth, but it just adds a lot the way scenes were lighted. It looked great, guys. I was actually really surprised by how much I enjoyed the way this film was shot, and during the action sequences, everything was visible, which is rare nowadays, and I was able to track all of the cool kicks, flips, and the way Sam uses his shield. It really worked. It aided this film. And speaking of the action, I know that this was a hot topic of conversation before the movie, but the action overall wasn't a mixed bag like many were assuming it would be. Okay, at times I did notice a sluggish approach to the hand-to-hand combat, but I think that's because the movie was trying to hit us over the head and make us remember Cap, or this Cap, did not take the super soldier serum. And because of that, when he's fighting against taller villains, or maybe villains that have crazy marksmanship, and Cap doesn't have his shield necessarily, he's at a disadvantage, right? And that's something that they, of course, point back to in a one-on-one conversation with a cameo that I can't talk about in the spoiler-free review, where, again, he starts to doubt himself, and Sam Wilson's thinking, gosh, should I have taken that super soldier serum? So it's pretty good that they still balance between that inner battle that he has, but the action, honestly, worked. I still enjoyed the fight choreography for the most part, and I was giddy with all of these cool kicks and flips. It was very much giving superhero. I mean, there were times where Cap is using his wings, and I'm thinking, yo, this is fire. Like, there is this amazing dogfight that they have near the Celestial Island, I guess is what they're calling it. But it was really cool to see how Sam Wilson was flying through the air, and then Cap was using his wings to, like, cut down his enemies. It was so dope. Now, when it comes to the overall cast, I know you guys are all wondering, okay, who delivered a good performance and who didn't? But we're going to talk right now about who did deliver good performances. And it starts right with our duo of Anthony Mackie and Danny Ramirez. Both of them are really good together. They have a nice blend of this back and forth. I love their comedy. They both have good comedic timing. It just really worked for me, and I do love that Anthony Mackie is a perfect fit for Cap. We knew this, at least I knew this, and a lot of my friends did too, but it's just the way that he was able to work as somebody who's an empathetic leader. He understands his power, but he doesn't want to be dominant. So he's working on trying to just lead Danny Ramirez's character, Joaquin Torres, through all the motions because he's been in it before. And when it comes to Danny Ramirez as Falcon, I was not 100% sold, but it was amazing to see him grow into the role in real time. And sometimes he even has more charm than his co-stars. He works with this script very well, and I ended up rooting for him a lot during these huge action moments. So it was cool to see how he was developing in this film, and now, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I want to see more of him as Joaquin Torres. Also, I very much appreciated the Miami love from Danny Ramirez. There was at one point he had a University of Miami Hurricane shirt before he was going to train with Isaiah Bradley. And then you also see him with a Miami Heat jacket while he's working on his computer. Excellent, excellent stuff. But maybe I'm a little biased. All right, let's move on now to a couple of other stars in this movie, one of them being Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross and Carl Lumbly as Isaiah Bradley. There were moments where I just said to myself, man, Harrison Ford seems very alive in this role, and you could tell he was having fun with it. I'm not saying Harrison Ford hasn't acted like this before in films, but it feels like it's been a while since he's taken on a role like this and really just sort of taken it for what it's worth and ran with it. And maybe it's a little bit due to the direction, but also Harrison Ford is a legendary actor. So I have no doubt in my mind that he saw this script, he saw the role, and he said, I'm in. And yes, he's a great fit for Thunderbolt Ross. I mean, it just works. And if he did the motion capture for Red Hulk, kudos to him as well, because all of his facial expressions were captured perfectly in the last act where we see Red Hulk. And the VFX for Red Hulk, by the way, just unreal. Like, the VFX in this movie overall, not great, but for Red Hulk, man, stellar. And then you have Carl Lumbly, who undoubtedly stole scenes as Isaiah Bradley. And honestly, I wanted more work from him in this movie. He deserved it. Oh my goodness, there were times where he was just ripping characters to shreds, but he was also incredibly grounded, down to earth. And he is what makes this movie feel real. You know, because of course he has the super soldier serum. The US government destroyed his life for 3 decades and experimented on him, but man, he reminds you of the humanity in this film. I think he's that nucleus for this movie that helps everything else work very well. So yeah, Carl Lumbly, just a great performance in this movie. And dare I say, Carl Lumbly had my favorite performance in the movie. Yeah, I think I'm ready to say that too. Now, when it comes to who was in the director's chair, Julius Onah, I wasn't too familiar with his work, and I honestly didn't know what he worked on before seeing on IMDb he worked on the Cloverfield Paradox, but I thought he did a really good job at mixing together elements from past Captain America movies that work so well. So what he does is he brings together the elements of political thriller and action popcorn movie. Now, the film does play less serious than Captain America the Winter Soldier, but there were some of those undertones that I'm thinking, I have missed this. And this is the blend I was hoping to get from The Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney+. Unfortunately, we did not get that, but here, yeah, it works pretty well. Now, I'm not saying it's foolproof, because at times maybe they sort of leave room for more, but yeah, director Julius Onah at least does a good job at understanding the source material and I like how he paces the movie, because it did feel like a breeze in most scenes. I never felt like the movie overstayed its welcome, and I think that is a huge plus for this film, because this does feel like a slice of life sometimes, where you're not necessarily connected too much to every other MCU movie. Of course, they still bring it together by the end, but I will say throughout the film, it didn't feel like I was being overwhelmed with several references. It just felt like very lived in for a moment in time with Captain America and Falcon. And of course, with any good Captain America movie, you have to have good to great music, and composer Laura Cartman delivers. She's right now one of my favorite composers outside of the MCU, but with the work she's doing in the MCU, she's becoming what Alan Silvestri was for the Infinity Saga. So the work she's doing here in the Multiverse Saga is blowing my socks off. You have Ms. Marvel, that entire score is excellent. You have now Captain America, Brave New World. Laura Cartman has worked on movies even outside the MCU, like American Fiction, she was excellent in that film. So I do love what she's doing, and they're almost establishing her as the next composer they'll lean on, and I hope they give her the reins for the big Avengers movies. I don't know if they've announced composers for that movie yet, but Laura Cartman deserves it, because she understands how to infuse this sense of like patriotism in a way, but also the superhero vibe. And then she has a subtle approach that works in Captain America, Brave New World. And man, again, you guys know I love my music, and she delivers. And no, I'm not talking about the music that you would hear in like a soundtrack, because those needle drops in this movie did not work. Okay, now it's time to get into some of my negatives, you guys. Now, listen, I have a lot more to talk about with this movie, but again, spoiler free, so I'm gonna do my best, okay? Disney, don't look at me like that. All right, so let's begin with my very first negative, and it has to do with the dialogue in this movie. There's a lot of questionable moments here, and sometimes it's a bit too cheesy. And honestly, it's incredibly noticeable. The writing doesn't necessarily help lots of scenes feel elevated, and unfortunately, they did suppress Anthony Mackie's charm in a lot of moments. This is an actor that is a proven name, right, in Hollywood. He can give movies the boost they need, and I do feel like the film sometimes just has him off to the side, and when he speaks up, it feels really, really like dated dialogue. I don't know. It didn't allow Anthony Mackie to be Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson. Instead, I think they were trying to mold him into a different type of leader here. It just never really clicked all the way for me. I also don't think having 5 screenwriters helps when scenes are jostling through tones like comedy and drama. Whenever a movie has 2 screenwriters, I'm like, okay, that's still fine, but more than 2 screenwriters gives me pause, and that's because most times the script sometimes will battle against each other or itself, and yeah, that's what's been happening in most movies that have more than 2 screenwriters, and it's evident here in Captain America Brave New World. I'd say about like 50% of the dialogue is rough around the edges, while the other 50% feels like it knows what it's doing. It's very intentional, so that's not great, but it's not a deal breaker either if you're going into it with that expectation. I also feel like the film could have committed a bit more to the social commentary that they hinted at several times. I mean, it did feel very generalized. Captain America is a black man in America. Need I say more? I mean, there were times where they were clearly referring to America being broken and not necessarily being united. And then there were times where, of course, hey, people are looking at Captain America like, oh, he's not my Cap, he's mine. But you know what I mean? Listen, I think the movie could have dove into that a little bit more, but instead they just put their toes in the pond and then they said, let's play it safe. Wish they kind of were a little bit more risque when it came to the social commentary. Alrighty, so now let's move on to my second negative, which is the VFX, because at times it looked incredibly rough. Even the green screen, I mean, oh, mamma mia. I leaned over to my friend Austin Putnam, who's also reviewing this film, and I said, Austin, the green screen is awful here. And I said that about like 5 times. Now, in the final fight with Red Hulk and Cap, I get it. It's not supposed to be, something too real. It's a Red Hulk, right? However, you can tell where the reshoots came in those moments and in others, because there were times where it's like natural background and then boom, green screen. And it's very jarring. And it's no secret that this movie needed lots of reshoots and some rewrites, but you can really tell where those moments were, so it does hurt the film more than help it. And when it comes to the villain work in this movie, because this is the next negative I have, well, it's not necessarily very convincing. I mean, Samuel Stearns is a character played by Tim Blake Nelson, and I can't give you much on his background because it is a spoiler-free review. However, I can say that the performance was very meh. And Tim Blake Nelson is not a bad actor by any means. I just think that maybe in this instance it wasn't his best work, and also I don't think the directing and writing for the character aided him in any regard. He felt out of the loop, almost like he was not on the same page with his co-stars, and I also didn't love that there were maybe too many villains. It's not that there were like 5 or 6, but having Samuel Stearns and then having Sidewinder, who's played by Giancarlo Esposito, I'm thinking, okay, what are we doing here? You know, it just feels like not very focused. And then you have, of course, Thunderbolt Ross, Red Hulk, another villain, or antagonist, really. So you sort of go through a few antagonists, and you're like, all right, this movie needs a little bit more direction, needs to be tighter here. Speaking of Sidewinder, by the way, Giancarlo Esposito did a great job here. He was having fun. His very first scene where he's speaking to some priest was really convincing, but we didn't get enough of him. They tease a return, but come on, you wanted more in this movie. And then there's another performance for me that didn't work well, and that's actor Shira Haas, who plays Ruth Bat-Seraph. It took me time to get used to her performance, but it just took way too long to get there. So at one point, it did click at the end, but before that, no, it was too wooden. I mean, the way that everyone else was acting, it's like she was still lagging behind. Now, that could be just a product of, again, writing for her character, but it didn't help the movie. It felt like she was out of place, unfortunately, and I don't want to say that for any actor. I want everyone to feel in place, but yeah, next to Anthony Mackie and Danny Ramirez, even Harrison Ford, yeah, you could tell, like, this is not working for the movie. So, not great, not very good either, so I just wish that maybe there was a little bit more direction that was at least given to her to help her through it all. Okay, so taking all of those negatives and taking my positives, what are my overall thoughts on Captain America: Brave New World? Listen, I love the fact that Anthony Mackie is Captain America. He deserves the shield. And Captain America films in the MCU are among some of my favorite in this entire cinematic universe. And Captain America: Brave New World is a film that I really liked. I didn't love the movie by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't think it's a film that even rises to the level of Winter Soldier and Civil War. But what I do love about Captain America: Brave New World, in some instances, is that it allows Anthony Mackie, Danny Ramirez, and even Harrison Ford and Carl Lumbly to play in this sandbox and have a ton of fun with it. The film itself, of course, suffers from having far too many screenwriters because the tones were maybe all over the place at times and conflicting with each other, and I felt the VFX held this movie back. So the film, on a technical level, has some elements that work, like we talked about earlier in this review, and then at other times, the VFX is just, at this point in the game for Marvel, it shouldn't look like this. And, of course, some of the antagonists are just not worked into the story in the movie very well. So, Captain America: Brave New World is a fun movie. I enjoyed it, and it's not what I would say a bad MCU movie. I mean, heck, it even makes Eternals worth sitting through. So, I would give it an 80%. So, like a low 4-star out of 5. It would just be a 4. Like, it's not something that when you watch it, you'll come away and say, man, I wasted my time. Instead, no. I think this is worth seeing on the big screen. It is fun. And I will say, afterwards, it did sell me on characters I wasn't necessarily sold on all the way. Like Joaquin Torres, a character that I thought was cool, but man, he's awesome here. And then you have Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross, and I'm thinking, can he be Thunderbolt Ross? And heck yeah, he can. So the movie itself is still an enjoyable time at the theaters. And yeah, I do think if you sit down and watch it, go in with those expectations we just laid out, you'll have a good time. So guys, let me know in the comments below what you think of my thoughts on Captain America: Brave New World. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more reviews just like this and like this video. Don't dislike it because it's Captain America, okay? Come on. But y'all, I can't wait. We have a good year of superhero films coming, so you know my reviews are soon to follow. Alrighty, y'all. Well, thanks so much for spending time with me. I'm going to go and get ready for all the other films that we got lined up. Yeah, I'm really busy. Alrighty, y'all. Again, God bless you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.